right, that's me in emoji form. So I have my own personal emoji, which is great. And welcome to Release Management for Mobile Developers, or essentially CI/CD, or Continuous Integration Development for Mobile Devs. We're going to focus more over on the CD side, the continuous deployment, the continuous, let's get things out there type talk. So, my name is Matt Soucoup. I work for Microsoft over in Seattle, and my Twitter handle's CodeMillMatt. My DMs are always open, so if you ever have any questions at all, feel free to hit me up about this talk, about anything. Always interested in talking. And so, at Microsoft, I work as a cloud advocate, and essentially what that means is I heart developers. I love talking about anything development related, anything mobile related, anything cloud related, and I get to come to conferences and talk. I get to create videos. I get to write blogs, and I also get to go back to the product teams and help them troubleshoot. So if anybody has any issues and says, you know, this product is great, this product needs improvement, let me know. I have office hours, so we'll schedule a half hour of my time when we can actually talk in person to figure out what's going on, or you can give me ideas, features, suggestions, and I can go right back to the product teams and make them happen. So, with that said, continuous delivery, the CD. Usually that means getting our apps out into the stores, out into our testers' hands, or maybe out into some UI testing frameworks, delivering something all the time. That can also mean, though, generally, continuous delivery of value, as one of my colleagues always says. So that's what the CD means. We're continuously delivering something of value, either to ourselves and our coworkers, or to our end users, or to our bosses and companies. So that's what the CD means, continuous delivery of value. So to initially start off with is continuous integration. And what continuous integration generally means is that we have GitHub, right, or some kind of source repository. We push our code up. That's going to compile, run some tests. Maybe the tests, obviously, always pass, 100% passing. That's the CI portion, right? That's pretty cut and dry. We're all used to that. Then the CD portion happens, compiles. We take that compile, then we deploy it around the world, right? Just boom, happens. At least in the web world, that's the way it happens. It happens 47 different servers, and whenever we want to do it, it's fine. I mean, how many people are web developers here? Right? And when you do CDs, you deploy whenever you feel like it, right? Middle of the afternoon, deploy it to a deployment slot and just say, all right, it's fine. Can't do that as a mobile developer, right? Because it's much tougher to get it through at least the Apple App Store. And if you do have a bug, all of a sudden you start getting the 1-star reviews. And so mobile development is a little bit tougher than deploying web apps, in that we don't control really the deployment mechanism. So mobile is tough. And it's even tougher than trying to write the Apple logo. But what I mean by that is that we have multiple operating systems that our teams are taking care of. We have multiple versions of those operating systems. We have multiple form sizes, even the new foldable devices coming out and whatever that's going to mean to our apps. So we have all that testing to take care of, and we just have a lot of work to go into it. And then we also have the app stores, right? And they couldn't be more different. We got one that's wide open, right? Just come as you are and just deploy, essentially. And the other one's locked down. The other one's like, not so sure. You have to really jump through a bunch of hoops in order to deploy anything. And so we got our users, too, who are saying, I'll deploy, update later. So now we have a bunch of different versions of our apps out there, too. So I don't have to tell anybody here this. Mobile's hard, right? And it makes you wonder why we picked this particular profession, other than it's cool that we get to buy new phones every year. So what we're going to talk about today, mobile release management, or mobile CD, is that we're going to cover a little bit about the continuous integration, setting it up. And then something that we need to be aware of when we do our continuous delivery is versioning. We want to make sure we get that right. And then obviously signing, provisioning. Android, that's easy. iOS is a little bit more involved, obviously. And then distributing the app. And here I'm mainly going to talk about distributing to ad hoc testing, but we'll cover a little bit about how we can push it up to the various app stores as well. So let's jump right into it then. All right, so what I'm going to use today to run my pipeline, my build pipeline, is Azure DevOps. But the concepts I'm going to talk about really are applicable on whatever type of CI/CD pipeline you want to run. The versioning, the signing, the signing, and the deployment. So the concepts we're going to talk about are applicable. I'm using, though, Azure DevOps as my demo vehicle. And then, so the Azure DevOps is going to be what we build it in. And then I'm using another one here called App Center. And App Center is how I'm actually going to have my users distribute and download the application. And it can do more. It can do building, it can do UI testing, it can do distributing, and so on. You can think of it really as what's becoming Microsoft's Firebase, but we're just going to use it right now for distributing. All right, so with that said, DevOps and App Center. And what we're going to build here, or what we're going to fix, is this. I was traveling here, and this is one of the demo apps I was working on for a previous video, and I've only tested it on Android, and then when I brought it up on iOS, I found that it didn't work. And it's a weather app. It just kind of gets current conditions, and this one's for Seattle. And believe it or not, the bug here is not with the temperature. That's Fahrenheit. And it's not insanely hot in Seattle right now. It's with the big question mark. That's a font awesome font glyph, and that's not right. It shouldn't be a question mark. It's probably supposed to be a moon right now. So what I want to do is fix that so it actually displays a moon. And so how I'm going to do that is fix the code, put it through a build pipeline, and have that build pipeline distribute it to an ad hoc test environment, and then I will eventually be able to download it on my phone and have the right thing. So that's where we're going. All right, so first things first is I want to actually build up that build pipeline. I set up already a project here in DevOps called Mobile Era. And what I want to do then is go and create a new build pipeline. And I can set it to a bunch of different source repositories. And I can do it in one of two ways. I can use YAML, or I can use essentially a GUI builder. And that's what I'm going to do for the sake of this demo, just because it's easier to see how things are put together. And once I get everything put together using the GUI builder, I can always export to YAML. And the benefit then for that is once I get it in YAML, I can put it into my source repository. And then when I hook it up again to another build pipeline, it's there. That way I can distribute my builds to other developers on my team. All right, so first things first, I'm going to hook it up to GitHub. It lets me pick my repo, which I'm calling Release Management. And then I get to pick a branch that I want to do my manual builds off of, the ones that I'm actually going to just hit Q through the UI. So I'm going to do this font fix one. Continue. And then it's going to ask me to pick a template. Now I can pick various different templates, like a .NET Desktop. There's Android ones, an actual Android running Java or Kotlin-based code. I could build Docker, Xcode, which is over on Apple's side, native Apple. I keep on saying native Apple. I'm a Xamarin developer, so I want to point out that it's not always Microsoft technologies that you can use to build here, or a bunch of Azure functions and so on. So I'm going to pick just an empty job so we can build it from scratch. All right, so the first thing we have is the pipeline itself. And so what I want to show about this pipeline is that what you can do is specify which agent you want to build with. So I'll make it a little bit smaller so I can actually get over there. How about I do this? All right. So with the agent specification, I can pick various operating systems I want to work with, from Mac OS, like 10.13 or 10.14 Ubuntu, Windows, and so on. So because I will be building an iOS application, I'm going to pick Mac OS 10.14. And each of these operating systems or computers comes loaded with a bunch of code. So this Mac OS will come with a bunch of different versions of iOS SDKs on it, a bunch of Xcode versions as well along with that. So eventually I could, if I needed to pick specifics, I could do that. All right. Git sources, that's what we did before, just picking our various repos. And then the agent job. And the agent you can think of as tasks. This is specific tasks that I want to run. And so this is something that's going to be common across no matter what you want to when you're putting into a CI/CD pipeline. I want to first do this, which is going to lead me to building that, which is going to lead me to deploying Z. So give it a name. And I'm going to build Android first because it's a little more, gives the steps, spells it out nice and easy. So I'm going to just call it Android agent. And I'm going to say this agent pool inherit running on Mac. And then some demands. These are the things that I want to make sure exist in this case. So because this is going to be an Android or a Xamarin application, I'm going to make sure MS build is there, which is just a build runner. And the JDK is there. And then Xamarin.Android. So these are just prerequisites that I want to make sure exist on macOS 10.14. If they don't exist, don't even bother. And now I can start adding tasks. And so these tasks, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There's just a bunch of different things, and there's a huge amount. There's different utilities here. I can archive files. I can actually run bash scripts, whatever bash script I wanted to run. Copying files, deleting files. I can run a bunch of different tests there. Package things up or downloading different packages. Deploying things to the App Store directly or to App Center, which I'll do. So there's what I'm trying to say is there's just a bunch of different things I can pick as certain tasks. And each one of these are going to be discrete. So the first one, going back to our slides, is that we're going to build up the CI pipeline. Grab it from source code and build it. So what I'm going to do initially, though, is Xamarin specific. And there's only a couple of Xamarin specific steps that I need to do, and then everything else will be common no matter which type of mobile app you're building. First is use NuGet. And this is just a package manager. So I'm going to say, all right, I want to use NuGet 4.4.1. And the next thing I'm going to do is restore all the packages in my project. So the project I'm going to pick, and now I can actually see my whole source control here. So I'm going to pick my Android project, and then pass in the build arguments. And then finally, the configuration is this $ parentheses build configuration. And where that came from is underneath here something called variables, or where it is going to come from. And variables are just something that can go across several different tasks. They're just variables. And so build configuration here is just going to be release. And so that, again, that's Xamarin specific, just saying, you know what, I want to make sure I don't include all the debug symbols. So I put that in there. And then the very last thing is actually to build the app. Again, go through, pick the project. the output directory where I want to put it, there's a build.binaries directory. And so this is actually built into DevOps. So there's a lot of system built-in variables. So this is just saying there's going to be a common one called binaries directory, that bin, essentially what it's going to be. And then I'm also going to put a subfolder in there. It's called build configuration. So bin/release. And then for my configuration, again, I want to tell it to build the build configuration. On the second one here, I don't need it on the second one because I have it on the first one. I know it's a little bit weird. And then everything else is the same. Now I should be able to kick it off and run it. So what I'm going to do is save and queue it. It's going to ask, hit initial, save and run. And what's going to happen then is I'm going to actually be able to see, it's going to go out, and what it's going to do is going to wait for an agent to be ready. And now it's actually going to create essentially a new Mac OS machine for me, and then step through it, each of those tasks, and run it. Now, this actually takes a couple minutes to do, and so it's always a little awkward when you have an audience waiting for you, and while something takes 2 or 3 minutes. So we could sit here and watch it, but it's just things running. So what we are going to do is, have you ever seen Star Wars with ASCII?
Yes.
Yes, all right. We're all in for a treat while this finishes running. Assuming conference Wi-Fi, but here we go. Episode 4, so it's one of the good ones, not one of the first 3. All right. The question is how long it took the person to put this together. And why?
Maybe he was waiting for...
Yeah, he was waiting for the build. All right, so the build has completed. Well, that's... They didn't intend for that to happen. All right, so the build is done, it was successful, and during each step, what you can do here is go through and actually view the tasks when they're done. And so if you did have any errors, like just during your build process, which you shouldn't after you checked it in and pushed it up to source control, but if you did, you can go through and actually see the logs. Cool. So that's essentially our smoke test. That's the CI version, right? This is just something that has to happen before you can actually start doing the fun stuff of the deployment, of getting signing and doing the versioning and so on. So let's do the fun stuff. Let's get the signing and versioning so we can actually start deploying. So back to edit pipeline. And the next thing I want to do is sign my APK file. And there is, what I want to do then is actually have a key store. And so what I did is I clicked over here on library, and this is a way to actually securely hold secrets, secret files. And these secret files are just for this project. So if I'm on my team and I'm the only one that has access to this, nobody else here would be able to get at these things. So I could have my Apple developer certificate put up here, which I do, and nobody else would be able to push to the store here. So it's secure, is what I'm trying to say. And I do have my key store here as well. So what I'm going to do then is go back to builds, edit. Then right after the build, I'm going to add a new one. And that's going to be search for Android signing. Now this is going to look for an APK file. So this doesn't have anything to do with Xamarin or anything. So it's just going to look for I have an APK file. I want to sign it. And I'm going to sign it as $binaries.build. So wherever I outputted my thing before, looking for the APK, sign it, and then I can pull up my key store. Then it's going to ask for a password, an alias, and the password for that. And I don't have them in my variables, so what I'm going to do is just type them in. So ideally, you would probably want to have them as your variables, and you can actually let me just put it in here so I can show you. So let's just say key store password. Pretty weather, and then what I can do here is make it a secret. That way, it's secret. So we'll just say pretty weather for key store password. Back to tasks. Alias happens to be the same thing. And I want to make sure I zip align it too. So signed. So it's just one task. It's actually going to run the Android CLI, sign, and zip align it. So it's giving me, abstracting that up so I don't have to worry about it, and it's going to be in a repeatable process. So, but before I want to do that, before I want to sign it, I want to version it. I want to make sure I have a versioning that works for everybody, because in my manifest, I just have 1.0 for the name and the version. So what I can do, or what people have done, is, let's see, is that there's a whole, what they call marketplace for it, even though everything's open source. And so there's a bunch of plugins which you can do and run them into your pipeline as well. So there's connect to your Azure boards, like agile boards. Connect those to Slack. Different test running feedbacks if you want. So there's just a bunch of different ones in here, and there's one for, I think we'll call mobile apps, and we'll pull it up. This one. And so what somebody's gone through and actually created something for Android, which just goes through, looks at the app manifest, and will actually bump the version for us. And also change the package identifier so we can actually build something that will say beta on it. And all it does, if to look at the source code, is a bunch of bash scripts underneath here. So it's just essentially, I think it's doing it's doing a grep to get them and just replacing them later. So what I'm saying here is that it's running bash. So you can run a bunch of bash, release it, OSS it, and other people can download these tasks. So that's exactly what I have done. I'll add a new step to my task here, Android version numbers. Point it to the manifest file. And then here, what is asking me what kind of version code, I'm just going to put it as the build ID, just so it keeps on incrementing for me. It's the easiest thing to do. So it's build.build ID. All right. And then the final step here, after I restore my packages, my NuGets, my package runner, bump the version, build it, sign it, and then it's deploy it. And so, like I said, I'm using App Center here to do that. And what I can do with App Center is underneath here is have a bunch of different groups to deploy to. And I have this one called public. Now I can have, so this would be for public testing, and I could create different ones, so I'm just, me and somebody else are in it for testing. So just different test groups. And so this public one, I can, if you go to this URL, could download and test the app. So that's what I want to deploy it to, is that particular URL. So I'll grab I'll need this to actually deploy it to. And then create a new step. App Center distribute, add it in. And it's just going through again and setting up the various connections. So it wants me to do an API token, so I should go through and add that first. Actually, I think I have it in here already. I do. All right, so I have an App Center connection. Then the slugs is just a way to refer to the app. So again, this is all documented, so I'm kind of breezing through it right now. And it's all related to however you were distributing the app. Like that, and then the binary, wherever to find the file. So again, it's build that binaries directory. And then stars that APK. And then I can enter some release notes. And then the destination ID would be right here. All right. What are they up to while it builds? All right. All right, we got time. So it doesn't look that great when the screen size is. All right, how we doing? We're almost finished up there. All right, it's deploying to App Center. That worked. We should be able to see it now. Go back over here. If I go to releases, I can see that I have it just deployed, targeting a really old version of Android. And if I go to my groups, there's one there, and nobody's downloaded yet. All right, so that's the whole pipeline of just getting it through. So now I could run that over and over again. The CI/CD is done, but that doesn't fix my iOS app. And so what I wanted to talk about before we fix that then is here, some a release planning, or how I read an article, and I wish I had read it back when I was doing working at a development house. It's how somebody has done a successful Git branching release strategy, and I think it works really well, and just want to talk about it a little bit. So what they have, the only two permanent branches they have going is master and development. And so master obviously is what you have out in the stores at the current time. And then development is really your drumbeat. That's what your developers are always going off of. And so your first one is you branch to development. And development's going to be remote. And then features are what your developers are working off of, obviously. And so they're your personal ones. So they pull from that. And then it's just going back and forth like that normally. But finally, you get to this point where you're going to create a new release branch. And so that's your release candidate. And so now that's back up on the remote. Your developers, they'll keep on moving, right? You don't want to slow them down. So now essentially they're working on the next release at this point. So when you get to that release branch, that's when your version number is finally set. All right, we're going with 2.1 there. But your developers are now on 2.1 dot something else. They don't care what that is. They're just keep on going with their versions. Releases, there's going to be some bug fixes with that as external testers find them and fix them. Developers, drumbeat keeps on going on development. More bug fixes on release. And then finally, the major deployment to the store. And then you branch back down to development too, so they have the final 2.1 as well. And then the drumbeat keeps on going with the feature branches and so on. So that's a pretty strong way to do the your release planning and get that out there. Where master really is, it doesn't do much. It just really just sits there and holds. Release branches come and go, and they're only there when you know that you're in a state where you can get ready to go and do your release. And it's just short-lived, just handles a couple bug fixes as you go. Development's your drum. It keeps on. It doesn't stop working ever. And then your feature branches, that's your local copies if you're using Git branches and for each developer, and they're just doing their thing as well. So the full article is right here, mobile release branching. It's worth a read. It's the person who wrote it also talks about hot fixes too, how they handle that, and yeah, it's totally worth it. So with that said, let's implement that, but over on the iOS side. All right. So what I have gone ahead and did is set up the build pipeline. I have an Android agent running, and I also went ahead and done a iOS agent too. So the iOS one does something very similar. It sets up my NuGet. It actually installs an Apple certificate and the provisioning profile. And those are both retrieved from the secure files as well. So I have a P12 and I have my mobile provisioning profile there. So I go back here. All right, so get those. Unlocking it with my certificate password when I did the P12 profile. And then start my build process then. Xamarin specific, getting the restore, or restoring all my packages, bumping the version in the info P list, again just doing a build ID, whatever run this happens to be, building it, and when I build it, I am saying create the app package, build the release, and then use this signing identity and this provisioning profile UUID. And where I get those from is the mobile provisioning profile, which is this one right here. So it's the UUID is right there. That's what they want you to copy in, and the full certificate that you signed it with is right here. So I have those stored in variables, and I'm just popping those in. So it knows how to sign it, essentially. And then I'm going to deploy it. So one other thing I want to hook up then is in these triggers. I want to make sure I have a pull request set up. So anything that goes to my development branch, so I'm using my development branch in this case as a release branch really. So if anything goes to development branch, kick off my CI/CD pipeline. So when the CI/CD pipeline runs, it's going to run over, hit up, build it, deploy it to App Center in this case, which will actually, over on iOS, the ad hoc will send me an email, and then I'll know I'll have a new version to test, which should have the bug fixed in it. All right, so then what's next is to fix the bug. And so what I said before is the bug happened to be as a font glyph, and it was font awesome. And the reason was that in order to make it work, you needed to be font awesome in bold on iOS. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to replace font awesome with a different one altogether. And so for each of these different conditions, it's a new code. And it seemed like a good idea to cover all these conditions when I wrote the app, like cloudy and foggy and partly cloudy daytime versus nighttime. But when you're sitting up here during a demo, having to comment and uncomment, it doesn't seem like such a great idea. All right, there it is. Fixes are in place. So what I'm going to do is stage my changes. I'm running against this font fix feature branch. Fonts are fixed. Commit it. One other thing I want to do up on GitHub first is go into, this is my repo, into the settings for branches, add a rule for my branch protection, and for my development branch, I'm just going to say, all right, run my CI/CD, and what did I name it? Mobile era-CI. This one. All right. Of course, it always asks for that, and you think I would have my GitHub password remembered by now. But no. Aha, good. All right, it's up there, it's ready to go. All it's saying is apply this to one branch. Anytime development runs, make sure I do my status checks. Push it. So just the font fix is not going to cause any status checks to run because I'm just against development. So what I want to do is open a PR. Font fix. And I want that PR to go against development. All right, so it already says already expected, waiting for status to be reported. And if I go back into here, my builds for this one, hopefully I should see it being kicked off pretty soon if I set everything up correctly. All right, it's queued, and it's pending, so now it's going to slowly kick off and run. So then I can go in here and I can see that both Android and iOS are not started. And what kind of is my account, at least for Azure DevOps, is a little bit lower on the rung than somebody who actually was paying for it. So it's a benefit for working for Microsoft. You get it for free, but you get the lower priority. All right, so it's just going to go through, restore everything just like we did before. And once it's done, I'll get an email. I'll be able to use Reflector, show this running, and have a brand new app that's good for testing. Connection closed. So, you know what? I've never been able to make it to the end of Star Wars. And I'm not sure I like how this ended either. I don't like you either. All right. So we'll watch it go through. It's actually making decent progress. And so if you bump into like the info P list, you can see where it changed things over. Where is... Like right now I'm using 1.0.111. So overall I've built this thing 111 times. All right. All right, deploy it. All right, so now if I go back over here, I should see a release, and there it is. Now, the moment of truth is I'm going to tether to my phone because I can't use Reflector on conference Wi-Fi for some reason. Hope that works. All right. Here we go, version 1.1.1 of Pretty Weather, so I can hit install. Right. Brings me out to this install link. And then it's just going to be like a regular ad hoc install. What can happen on international data roaming? All right. So I go see here, it's downloading. It's not that big of an app. Got it. Launch it. And it says NA now, because it doesn't have it, but it's better than the question mark. then now it gets the clear because I actually had to go out and hit the weather service before. So we fixed our font through CI, notified our testers, and now we have it. So, and what's nice then is, like I said before, I did it all through this, building it manually through a GUI, but I could go now and view my YAML here, and it shows me actually all the tasks that I use to do it, and then I can export these or copy them over to a YAML file and then distribute that with my source code. That way other people can build it as well. So, with that said, code, a lot of notes about this, and the YAML files will be out at this short link. And thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. So, and the URL for the Star Wars will be out there too. So, thank you everybody.